Hello and welcome to Effective People Management Crash Course Series. Today's topic is performance and behavior management. Our learning outcomes are to understand the drivers of accountability, understand feedback options, and review the techniques outlined in the toolkit for challenging situations. The need for accountability is based upon two driving forces. One is fear and one is satisfaction. How do you hold people accountable? Do you motivate people through fear or satisfaction? You really need to ask yourself this. If it is mostly fear, you are doing it wrong. Do I empower people to take action, allow for mistakes, and discuss lessons learned? Why? We learn by screwing up. We learn by making mistakes, and we have to fix those mistakes, then stop and discuss them so they never happen again. What are the elements of clear expectations? It's a lot of questions that need to be answered. It may seem overwhelming, but if you go through this checklist, you will be able to effectively communicate with your employees with no questions left unanswered and no assumptions. So who needs to do a task? Who specifically, not just a group of people, who is in charge of that task, even if there's multiple people involved? What specifically needs to be done? You may think that they understand what you're talking about, but based on how you drive their need for accountability, they may be a little afraid to ask questions. When does this project, task, etc. need to be completed? Specifically when? What date? What time? Now cannot always be the answer, because if everything needs to be done now, something cannot be done now. Where does this task need to be delivered to? And jumping down to the bottom one, how does it need to be delivered? So does this task just need to be a check mark on a piece of paper that's taped to the wall? Does it need to be emailed in a PDF? Does the PDF need to be 20 pages or 1 page? Do you need a summary or a whole entire sermon? You need to answer these specific questions so that the employees involved know all the details and are successful. And then finally, the item that I skipped over, which may be the most important in sense of communication and clear expectations, is why. Why does this need to be done? If everything is confidential and nobody needs to know the details, they're not going to understand why XYZ needs to be done. And they're not going to be able to understand, hey, I have a better way. Or so-and-so over there in that department actually has a better way. Let's go talk to them so we're not wasting time, and time is money. Let's talk about metrics. Metrics are so important. They must be measurable. How are you going to say, yes, you've succeeded. You did this. You completed it. Oh, by the way, it took you 3 months to do it when it should have took you 3 days. So time could be a metric. Why do you want metrics? You want to reinforce accountability, track progress, redirect when possible as well, identify any gaps or deficiencies in the process, in the skills, and communicate what is important. Make sure your expectations are crystal clear. No gray area. Gray areas lead to mistakes. Now let's talk about feedback conversations. There has been a shift from traditional end-of-year, boring, monotonous feedback to ongoing feedback conversations. And yes, does this mean you're going to have to spend a lot more time talking to and communicating with your employees? Yes, it does. But what it also means is you're going to get stuff done throughout the year. You're going to be less frustrated, and they're going to be less frustrated, which is a win-win for everybody, but it is absolutely much more time-consuming, I'm sorry to tell you. Why do we want frequent feedback conversations? Annual reviews are too late. If you're saving up, a satisfaction or a fear item for 10 months, you're wasting time, and mistakes continue to happen during that time period. Or if you're saving up for 10 months, heck, even 1 month, a pat on the back, that person may feel so demotivated because you haven't said anything that they may be looking for another job. And out the door goes your most important and valuable employee. Also, frequent feedback conversations are necessary because in the annual review, it's usually the manager talking not even to, but at the employee. It's a monologue, not a two-way dialogue. They are often very formal and a little stifling. Therefore, some employees may not feel they have the opportunity to speak up and discuss any concerns, challenges, or even any great things that happen throughout the year. The annual review often gives information not previously discussed. In the old days, the managers would stockpile information into this folder that no one ever saw, and then they'd whip it out at the annual review and say, hey, let's talk about the things that I should have been talking about all year with you, but I decided to save up for 11 and a half months. I find that annual reviews are rarely followed up with appropriate actions. Why? Because you have 11 and a half more months to figure this out, and we keep kicking that ball down the field. Annual reviews are also often a stressful experience for everyone involved. So we want to remove the stress from feedback conversations. Let's change meeting frequencies to more often. This may seem overwhelming, so let's start with quarterly if you're not already doing feedback conversations on a quarterly basis. My preference is to have monthly conversations with every single employee that is under you for at least 15 minutes once a month. If that sounds overwhelming, start with quarterly. So if you're doing quarterly, that means you're going to have 3 quarterly conversations, and then the 4th one can be your annual review if you want to keep annual review, or in some industries, it is mandatory because of compliance. So weekly would be great. The more employees you have, that may not be possible. Monthly is the ideal frequency of meeting conversations to discuss feedback, not necessarily just performance, not necessarily just behavior. Well, Wendy, this seems like a lot. What am I going to talk about? Here are just some ideas for you to talk about with your employees if you're doing them on a quarterly basis, a monthly basis, or maybe even a bi-monthly basis. So one idea is, okay, let's talk about the climate review. Measure the job satisfaction and the morale of that employee that you're talking to. This doesn't need to be super complicated. These are just ideas for you. Another conversation you could have, again, these are 15-minute conversations, is where you're talking about the employee's strengths and talents. So you are going to help them identify and develop innate abilities, so abilities they already have, and you're going to talk about them and say, how can we use these for jobs within our company and or the job that you're already doing? Another opportunity as part of the 5 conversations is opportunities for growth. So now you're going to take that strengths and talents and say, I, your manager, want to help you improve performance and standards. And here are the opportunities I see within our organization. Does this mean that you're going to keep promoting everybody all the time? Absolutely not. That would be ideal, but not everybody can do that. Not all the employees are going to be able to do that, and your company may not have the positions to promote them into. But opportunities for growth doesn't necessarily mean just a promotion to another job. It could be adding tasks to their current job so that they're fulfilled and that you, the employer, are feeling you're getting the best out of all of your employees as well. The next element of possible conversation is learning and development. So identifying and support future opportunities. Now, this one might be a little bit of a hard pill to swallow, but sometimes future opportunities is with another organization or with another department. That doesn't mean that you're going to lose them forever. What I find is that if we help someone grow so much that we don't have the opportunity in our organization, they may take that information and go somewhere else, but they may refer people back to you, say, that was an awesome place to work. I really suggest you work there. The other thing that I find is that as my company continues to grow, eventually that employee is going to come back and they're going to take information that they've learned somewhere else, plus the information that you've taught them, and they're going to help your company grow. So it's a circle. And then the final conversation that you can consider when you're having these quarterly, bi-monthly, or monthly conversation is just general innovation and continuous improvement. And this is where you're helping the employee help your department increase the effectiveness. Again, this doesn't necessarily mean that their job per se or they're essential to their job is changing, but they're increasing the effectiveness of what they do on a day-to-day basis. Moving on. These are the things that we don't really like so much. Improvement plans, formerly called performance improvement plans. I have changed them to just improvement plans. Why? Because I find most improvement plans actually are not performance based. They're often behavior based. So if you just use the improvement plan title, it's removing the behavior or the performance in the title. And yes, improvement plans do work. However, they take true commitment by the employee and the manager. If you are putting someone on an improvement plan just to get them out the door, do me a favor and don't do that, because they're going to be annoyed, you're going to be annoyed, and they're not going to improve during that time period. So now you're going to waste money that you could just give them in a severance check and say, have a great day, and send them off to find their happiness somewhere else. I have noted here that the improvement plans can be up to 30, 60, 90 days. I really don't care what day you pick. So if you're saying your improvement plans are 30, 60, or 90, or 6 months, whatever it is, just be relatively consistent, not just throughout your department, but throughout your organization, so that you are not ever accused of discrimination, that you're giving one set of people longer periods, such as 90 days, and another set of people only 30 days. Regardless of what time period you choose, up to is important. So that way it could say up to, say, 60 days, but at day 28, you've decided they're not cutting it. You end that improvement plan, you terminate that employee, or you demote them and put them somewhere else in the organization that's a better fit, and you move on. And that way everyone around them is not frustrated that they're getting a chance and the other employees are actually picking up the slack.